Craig, for the introduction. And thank you for inviting me here. It is it's a not totally anticipated pleasure to be speaking at the 10th anniversary of this organization. Because when we started this thing in February of 2001 as a national organization, nobody knew were we going to be here, a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. And it's a great pleasure and a feeling of great satisfaction that we are here, very much here. That the vision that we have in those days has kept us going through this time. Let me see. I'm looking around here. Are there any other members of the founding convention in 2001 present here today? I understand Chet is here.
Where's Bill?
Where is he? Bill Carpenter is here. Stand up, Bill. And is Chet here?
He was here yesterday.
All right, well, let's give him a hand in absentia. There were 24 of us at that founding meeting, and it was held at a place called UU in the Pines, or Universalist Unitarian Meeting Place in the Pines in Brooksville, Florida, about 80 miles north, approximately, of the Tampa, St. Petersburg area. And it's a retreat organized by the Universalist Unitarian Church, where you could sleep in sort of semi-camping facilities, and they had a kitchen that served, camp-style meals, and meeting rooms. It was kind of comfortable. And we spent a long weekend there, the 24 of us, with very much of a historical sense that what we were doing is founding a new national organization, and in particular the agenda was to hash out, to debate, and to agree upon a set of bylaws. The first bylaws. Do we have a copy of the bylaws here? Does somebody have one they can hold up? I thought it would be on the literature table, but maybe it'll come later. To adopt the bylaws. When we adopted the bylaws, there we go. Thank you so much. Yeah. Bylaws 2006, it's amended, but the original bylaws look very similar. And when we, I'll give that back to you. When we adopted that, we wanted to make sure, A, that it covered all the basis of the kind of structure that we wanted it to have, and B, that it was short and legible and in English. We've seen too many bylaws of other organizations and doing our research that were like 50, 60, 100 pages that only a lawyer could love and understand. And so we worked very hard. We had a bylaws committee that met for many months before the actual convention that worked very hard to try to make the bylaws clear and understandable. And I'm happy to say that the core of those bylaws has served us very well. It's formed a stable foundation for the organization these past 10 years and probably for the next 10 as well. There have been some amendments. They have been relatively minor. And the scope of the amendments has confirmed that the core of the bylaws was solid and has worked for us as an organization. The basic idea has been that every participant in the organization has one vote in the organization, which they can cast in any of the meetings that they may attend, so that if you attend 5 different meetings, you still have only one vote, and you can choose in which of your meetings you cast that vote. And you cast that vote in the meeting of your choice for a delegate from that meeting. That each meeting has one delegate, and those delegates assemble annually at the Congress, which is happening tomorrow. And those voting delegates elect the board of directors and vote on policy amendments and policy changes. And that's the basic democratic structure that we formed at that time. We also made the board of directors elective. It had not been. And we also adopted, as part of the bylaws, very importantly, a charter, which you'll find on the last page of the bylaws. It's a meeting charter, not the same as the corporate charter, which came earlier, but a meeting charter. And those of you who are meeting conveners who have started new meetings will probably have a copy of that meeting charter somewhere in the files of your meeting. At the beginning of your meeting, when the meeting is founded, the Service Center issues a charter. And the charter sets out, among other things, but the basic philosophy of the organization in terms of sobriety, meaning abstinence, which is made very, very clear, secularity, and self-help. The three S's that are the philosophical foundations of LifeRing are set out in that charter and have remained with us since that time. When we finished the discussion and debate at the three-day conference, at the founding conference in February 2001 in Brooksville, when we had the final vote to adopt the bylaws as numerous times amended and changed, there was an outpouring of enthusiasm such as I've experienced very few times in my life. There was an enormous shout of joy that went up from everyone. Everyone surged out of their seats and into the center of the room and gave each other a group hug such as really I have never experienced before or after. Tremendous joy in the room, tremendous enthusiasm, captured just only dimly on a photograph that was taken a few minutes later. That was followed by us lining up ceremonially to sign our names to the new bylaws, much like the founders of the Declaration of Independence signed their names, in big letters. But that document is still around somewhere. We'll find it on the web or post it on the web. It was a great, good feeling that came out of that, and I have to say that everything was resolved with almost perfect unanimity when it was done. On the abstinence issue, which was an important issue to define what we mean by abstinence, there was one dissenting vote. It was 23-1. But apart from that, there was unanimity on everything. And the feeling that came out of it was just, I've spent a lot of time being high, right, as have most of us here. We wouldn't be here. Being high on various drugs. I have never, on chemistry, experienced anything like the high that I experienced when that meeting was over, when we had the final vote to adopt the bylaws and to found the organization. That was ecstatic. It was just really wonderful, and I wish you could have all been there, because it's a surge of energy, a charge of the batteries that is lasting me my lifetime. If you could have a little spark of that, why, well, you do have a little spark of it, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. That's right. So, we've had a lot of continuity since that time, and I won't try to rehearse the details of that, except to say that we have had our annual meetings under various names, Congress, Expo, and so forth, as Craig pointed out. But the important thing is we have gotten together every year since that time. And that's kind of the heartbeat of the organization, is this annual meeting. Everybody gets very pumped up, particularly the people in the Service Center, get pumped up and perhaps drained out in the process. To get it to happen. We have had regular meetings of the Board of Directors. We have almost never had a situation where we lack a quorum. That's one of the signs of faltering organizations, when you can't get the board together to get a quorum. During the 14 years that I was CEO, we had maybe once or twice where we lacked a quorum. It was always for serious reasons like a car accident or an illness or something of that sort. So we've been flourishing. We've had a smooth transition of leadership here. Not every organization, not every nonprofit is able to make a smooth transition from the founder and the founding generation to the successors. We planned for this for 2 years ahead of time. There was a committee, a transition committee, that for which many members are here, that planned for the transition so that it would go in a smooth way. And even though there were some surprises and bumps and so on, it has gone in a smooth way. We are in the post-founder generation, and the organization over the past year has just flourished. It makes my heart proud to look at the website and to read some of the reports that I see, and to see how the organization has continued to grow and to flourish and to tackle its problems and to bring forth new initiatives and energy for people. It makes me feel like the proud dad who watches his kid, go on to college and get honors and so forth. I just feel really pumped up to see it happen. It's wonderful. And not least of the achievements that the organization has had in its history is that it's financially independent. we are surviving financially, at least according to what I hear. Of course, we always have operated on a shoestring budget. It's like we are as poor as church mites. And our annual income, when you rank us next to other nonprofits, is like not so negligible, like a speck of dust on a flea on an elephant. We're so tiny. But we've done tremendous amounts with that little budget. We have had tremendous achievements with the few resources that we've had. We have made them last. We have made them go around. We've got more bang for the buck, or ROI, than any other organization I can point to. Return on investment. Jargon, sorry. So that's parts of our history, or strands of our history, since the founding that, for me personally, have been very satisfying and very inspiring. And that's what's uppermost in my mind. But I have to tell you that getting to this relatively smooth path that we've had in the last 10 years was not easy. The birth in February 2001 was accompanied by years of labor pains that were at times bitter and unhappy and painful and costly, and that many times put the fate of this thing very much at risk, and it wasn't at all clear at certain times whether or not it was going to happen. So when it did happen, they explained some of the joy when it did happen that we were able to get there. So let me go a little bit into this prehistory. How much time do I have?
Lots of time.
Let me go a little bit into the labor pains, the prehistory of 2001, the prehistory of the founding convention. And there were two main strands there that shaped where we are today, or where we were in 2001. Two main strands. One of them was a federal lawsuit, and number two was the internet. So let me talk about them in order. Once the federal lawsuit. When I went to my first, when I got sober, I had an intake interview with my counselor from Kaiser, down in Kaiser, Oakland. And when it was over, he said, "You got to go to support groups." And I said, "Where are they?" And, he held up an AA schedule, a little booklet, and he held up a one-page sheet with the alternative meetings. So I went to the alternative meetings, and the alternative meetings were part of a group called SOS, Secular Organizations for Sobriety. And when I went to my first meeting, which was convened by Carl Slinkard, who I wish we were here, but he was a tremendous fighter and a tremendous convener back in '92. I went to my first meeting. There were leaflets on the table carrying various attacks on SOS and attacks backed by SOS on a group called SOS West. And I felt like, oh my God, I'm back in the New Left in 1969 or something, between Revolutionary Youth Movement 1 and Revolutionary Youth Movement 2. If you were there, you know what I'm talking about. I felt we were back, and indeed there was a schism in the ranks of SOS at that time, and I landed right in the middle of it. There was a group of Northern California meetings centered on a houseboat in Sausalito, with meetings mostly in Marin, just a few. This is like a teapot, okay? But this group called itself SOS West and had incorporated as SOS West. And their philosophy was that you only have to abstain from the substances to which you are addicted, okay? From which you define yourself as being addicted. Okay. So if you define yourself as being alcoholic, addicted to alcohol, but you're not addicted to marijuana, you don't have that disease, therefore, in their philosophy, it's okay to smoke weed, and you can still call yourself clean and sober because you're abstaining from the drug to which you're addicted. Flip it around. If you're addicted to alcohol, it's okay to drink. If you're addicted to cocaine, it's okay to smoke and to drink, and so forth. You get the picture? Okay. That was their definition of sobriety. And furthermore, their view was that if you were addicted to alcohol at one time, later on you could say, I'm no longer addicted to alcohol. I am cured now, and you could go back to drinking, as long as it was, quote, normal or social drinking. Okay? That was their philosophy of abstinence. And they went, now see people laughing as well. Yeah, in retrospect, it seems like the most ridiculous thing you ever heard. But at the time, it was deadly serious. And they went around, their leading spokespeople went around to various treatment programs and DUI programs, propagating this philosophy. With, as you can imagine, a major uproar from referral sources and from people who were serious about sobriety. Major uproar. No, we can't have this, we can't have this. This is not us. And so there was a fight over the identity of SOS. What is SOS? Is SOS an across-the-board abstinence organization, or is SOS an organization where everybody in the room is sober from one thing, but not necessarily from anything else? So that, you know, in the SOS West meetings, quite literally, you had everybody using something. There was not one, it's true, there was not one totally clean and sober person in the room. But that was considered sobriety. So there was a fight over the reputation of the organization, over the philosophy of the organization. And because the SOS organization had no system of no internal process, there were no elections, there were no charters. The board of directors, for all practical purposes, didn't exist. If it did exist, it had no power to do anything about meetings that went out of line. And the center in Los Angeles, it was called the Clearinghouse, saw itself as just a traffic clearinghouse, kind of a traffic server, instead of as any kind of a directing or guarding kind of organization with some power over the philosophy. And so nothing was done about these people. Nothing in the terms of the normal, people like Carl, the convener Carl that I talked about, and a small handful of others fought with leaflets counter to their leaflets, and with with personal opinion statements and with calling treatment centers to make the position clear. But there was no way effectively to shut those other meetings down or to force them to abandon that name and use some other name. So it was a real pickle. And because SOS had no mechanism for resolving these disputes by its internal process, because they had no internal process, because of that, it ended up in federal court. And surprise and disaster, Bill Carpenter was with me the whole time during that federal court case as one of the law clerks in the case. Surprise and disaster, SOS lost the case. SOS won the case. And the federal courts issued an injunction saying that SOS cannot use the SOS trademark anywhere in Northern California. They divided the state sort of at Kern County across, all the way up north to Oregon. SOS was enjoined from operating. Now at this time, we still operated the largest operator. We still sponsored or promoted the largest single cluster of SOS meetings in the SOS organization here in Northern California. Always was. And suddenly we couldn't use that name anymore. So we kind of went underground. There was a period of a year or so after the injunction was issued when we basically ignored it. And I was in there printing up new schedules for the new meeting schedules, leaving out the date or any clue as to what the date was, so that we couldn't be hauled into court and say, aha, you published a meeting schedule after the injunction, and we're going to get you. But eventually they did get us. They did find out what we were doing, and they sent us a letter, must have been January '99, saying, we're aware that you are scofflowing at this injunction. We know what you're up to, and if you don't stop it immediately, we're going to haul you in, and the judge is going to fine you $10,000 for each act in violation of the injunction, and so on. So now they got serious. This is a major, the other side was a major law firm in San Francisco, Howard Rice, Nemorowski, Kennedy & Law, or one of the top 3 law firms in San Francisco, which maybe coincidentally, I don't know, also is the law firm that handles the accounts of the major liquor distilleries and beverage manufacturers. Coincidence? I don't know. I was never privy to their internal meetings, but they threw very high-powered resources into this case. And to make a long story short, SOS lost it. And so there was this injunction, and for a while we couldn't, we were underground, as I said, and then they got serious. And so we had a meeting. We had to change. We had a meeting May 23rd, 1999, on the patio of Jeff G's and Dina V's house in Albany, just north of Berkeley. On the back patio there, we had a meeting of representatives of all the Northern California SOS meetings, more or less, and decided we had to change our name, and we picked a new name, and that's why we picked the name LifeRing's Secular Recovery. So on May 23rd, if you take a notes on significant dates, May 23rd, 1999, LifeRing's Secular Recovery was formed as a local organization or regional organization. Okay. Actually, the first meeting with that name was the meeting I started in San Francisco on January 4th, 1999, which was the first meeting in San Francisco. And so that was the first one that had LifeRing's Secular Recovery attached to it. So keeping track, a score of this, that's the date. Now, so that was one strand of the labor pains, is this federal lawsuit. The other strand was the internet, or our use of the internet, our understanding that the internet was there for us. There was a time when Carl, the convener in Berkeley, in Oakland, told us, a few of us who were huddled in the meeting in the basement of the library at Temescal Public Library, he said, "We are the last SOS meeting in the country. There aren't any others left." And we all sort of said, "Oh, well, that doesn't matter. We'll go on. You know, no matter how many there are, we still want to go on." And it was kind of whistling in the dark, but we put on a brave face to it. And it turned out not to be true. There were others. But we didn't know about them because there was no internal communications worth mentioning in that organization. There was a newsletter that came out after that from time to time, but that also had no systematic information about meetings and no way for meeting conveners to connect with one another. That was broken by Tom Shelley. And I hope Tom hears this or reads this, because I want to pay a special tribute to Tom Shelley. Tom Shelley is, without a doubt, one of the spiritual founders and agitators of this organization. His internet initiative, more than anything else, started the ball rolling that got us where we are today. What he did in 1995 was to start an email list, an SOS email list. And at first, you know, in those days, if you were on email, there was no, list servers hadn't been invented yet, or at least they weren't available. So each of us, all 12 of us who were members of this email list, kept the other 11 email addresses in our address book, and then we would sort of send out a group email to everybody, and the other ones would send out a group email to the same group. And it was like that. And if anybody dropped out or anybody joined, everybody had to add their names. It was chaotic as hell. But it worked, because for a while it got us in touch with one another, and we realized, my God, there are other people out there. We have these concerns, and we have these issues, and we want to do this and that. But we had communication. We had a beginning of community. We graduated eventually to a list server. Oh, you should have heard the complaints when we went from a cooperative list to a list server. Oh, Tom Shelley was called a fascist and a Gauleiter and every other dictator and tyrant and czar, because he was now the center of as the listmeister. The very word listmeister just got everybody's anti-authoritarian hackles raised, and he was just pounded with flak and flames. But we got past it. We went over it. We formed an actual email list, and that simplified it a great deal, and it grew. And that was the SOS Mail email list, and that changed its name when LifeRing was founded to the LSR Mail email list. How many of you are members of that list? All right, look at that. Okay, is that list important? Yes? Okay, well, you thank Tom Shelley for that. Tom Shelley started that. Now, one of the items that Tom Shelley put on there was that he had heard from reliable sources that the group leader's guidebook that SOS had was going to be updated. And that the person who was going to do the updating was the secretary of the president of the organization that was the financial sponsor of SOS, a group called CODESH, Council for Democratic Secular Humanism. It was going to be updated by the secretary of the boss, of the head of this organization. And we said, Tom and I said, hey, well, we're conveners, you know, this is a convener's guidebook. We're conveners, we might have some ideas as to what should go into this, because the original guidebook was a 12-page pamphlet that was full of generalities, and it was good to have, but boy, there was a lot of stuff that was missing in it. And we said, well, we certainly have some ideas for it. So a conflict arose between the head of SOS, the executive director, Jim Christopher, and the sponsoring organization that hired him and paid him, on the one hand, and the conveners of SOS, on the other hand, about what should be in the convener guidebook. And in order to get that going, Tom or I forget really who took the initiative, founded another list called SOSCON, S-O-S-C-O-N, a convener list. And the purpose of SOSCON was to work toward the revision or the updating of the Group Leaders Guidebook, toward the creation of a new Convener's Guidebook for the organization. And in other words, to get input from conveners themselves into it. And about the same time, in June 1996, June 16, 1996, because SOS had no website, and everybody said, you got to have a website for Christ's sake, you know. Well, where are you? This is like the internet age. You don't have a website. So I went ahead and started the unhooked.com website, which is now LifeRing.org. June 15th or 16th, 1996. And that was an almost immediate hit. I mean, stuff started coming in from all over the country very quickly. It started out as a local website. We're just trying to exchange information of the Berkeley and Oakland meetings. But very quickly we got contributions from Florida and New York and Atlanta and various other places, and it quickly became a national website. What emerged over the course of this process was a deep-seated feeling among SOS conveners that we needed to reform the organization. There needed to be a process. There needed to be a democratic process in the organization. There needed to be transparency as to what was going on. There needed to be openness about how many meetings there really were and where they were. There needed to be financial accountability, which was totally lacking. And there needed to be a democracy in the organization. It needed to be bottom-up instead of top-down. So a way that was structured, and I don't know how it is today, and I don't mean to offend any SOS members who are very, well-intentioned people, good people, but the way the organization was structured was it was owned lock, stock, and barrel by CODESH. They held the controlling share in CODESH had the controlling share in SOS, and they hired and hired the executive director and paid him. He was on salary and a health plan to them. And this all came to a head at a convention we had in September '99 in Berkeley, in the basement of Harry, where we had our past congresses. When we met to discuss the future of SOS. And the issue was, when was SOS going to become a self-standing organization, a freestanding organization, instead of a subsidiary of the secular humanist group? Because Jim Christopher had written in one of his books that being subsidiary of CODESH was temporary, just a passing thing, that we were going to become independent. And so the question was raised, when is this going to happen? And his answer was, well, we've changed our mind. It's not going to happen. We're going to be permanently a subsidiary of CODESH. Then somebody asked the question, what would happen if the existing executive director, Mr. Christopher, something happened to him, run over by a bus? What would happen? And the answer came that CODESH would appoint a successor. You could have heard a pin drop in the room when that was said. You could have heard a pin drop as everybody digested the meaning of that, the implications of that. And then somebody finally opened their mouths and said, what the hell are we here for? What the hell are we here? What power do we have? What is our role here? What do we have to say about who leads this organization? Nothing. And at that point, it became inevitable that another organization would be founded. It took 2 more years for it to actually happen, but that was the crucial psychological dividing line when people who were in the middle, the people who said, let's try and get along, people who said, I'm sure there's a solution within SOS for these problems, finally said, no, we've got to start a new organization. And 2 years later, we did. So, that was the labor pains. Let me see if I've left anything very obvious out. No, that's about right. But those were the I forgot one important detail. I had said that there was an effort on the Tom Shelley and myself and others to write a group leaders guidebook that was based in the experience of conveners rather than the experience of the secretary of the head of the former organization. We held a meeting, a national leadership meeting of SOS people in the spring of '97, at which the vote was unanimous that we were going to go ahead and write that book ourselves. That we're not going to wait for the secretary to redo it, we're going to write that book ourselves. Out of that meeting, that national leadership meeting of SOS conveners, came the decision to form LifeRing, Inc. DBA LifeRing Press. And directly after that, within weeks after that, we formed, I did the work, I thought of the name, I did the legal work, I set it up. We set up LifeRing Incorporated as a corporation, a nonprofit corporation in California. That was April 25th, 1997. And we published the volume that we had talked about. We got it to completion. Quite a few people worked on it. We published this, Sobriety Handbook, the SOS Way, April 1997. Okay. This was the Group Leaders Guidebook version 2 for SOS, put together by SOS conveners themselves. Now, you read this today, it looks really antiquated and primitive. But for, it's like a grab bag of tools and a vague discussion of meeting format and a sort of philosophy in there. Some basic ideas of philosophy are in there. But it's really primitive from where we are today. But for those days, it was a tremendous step forward. And this had good success. Lots of people sent us money. We set up an office, we set up an address and a database, and started fulfilling orders and taking money and so forth, and actually donated some of that money back to the SOS organization. And that was the founding of LifeRing, Inc., before there was LifeRing Secular Recovery in 1997. And it was only when the other event that I talked about, in April, when we formed a local organization of LifeRing Secular Recovery, that merged together with LifeRing Inc. And then a national organization, of course, also merged together with LifeRing Inc. And LifeRing Press, instead of becoming the freestanding publisher that it was, became the subsidiary of and the publishing house of LifeRing Secular Recovery. I am visibly stressed talking about this stuff because even after 15 years, I still feel some of the pain that we went through in that process. It was difficult. It was difficult to go through. There were friendships that were broken. There were people that relapsed. There were lots of nasty things said about many of us, and it was a tremendous uphill battle to get to that point. But sometimes, no pain, no gain, they say, right? Sometimes you have to go through difficult rapids on a river where you're liable to knock your head or get spilled. All kinds of dangers are on the way before you can get to the quiet waters that we finally got to in 2001 with the National Founding Convention. So, do I have any more time? No. Okay. I was going to end up on a positive note.
Well, you can give a brief positive.
All right, I'm going to give a short positive note. I say, what we have been doing since that founding convention can be said in some ways to be a long march through the institutions, a long march through the treatment programs. We acquired our credibility as people in the treatment programs of Kaiser and other treatment programs because we stayed clean and sober. Those of us who are identified with this secular alternative, we stayed clean and sober even though the people who were doing 12-step were dropping like flies left and right all around us. And the counselors noticed this and were surprised, astonished, shocked, because when they asked us, how many 12-step meetings you've been to this week, in a big meeting, we said none. They said, oh, these people are doomed to relapse. But then we'd say, but we went to two, secular alternative meetings. Oh, okay, and onward. But we stayed sober. They noticed it. We stayed sober. That gave us credibility. And that has been the ticket for LifeRing and for the LifeRing members, LifeRing conveners, LifeRing, the people representing LifeRing. That has been the ticket of admission to treatment programs ever since. And it's the #1 ticket of admission. Sometimes it is all you need, is to be able, when you give a presentation, sometimes all you need is to be able to open it up and to say, my name is so-and-so, I am 2 years and 3 months clean and sober. All of it in LifeRing, or most of it in LifeRing. But you say, just that you are sober, you're representing LifeRing. You don't have to say anything more after that. It's almost a footnote to that statement, because that statement gives you the credibility to get in the door of almost any treatment programs except the most hardcore, locked up 12-step programs. And even those are starting to shake and open up. I went to, a couple of years ago, I was asked to speak at a place out in the boonies that had been founded by someone who had been sponsored by Bill W. himself. And it was like, 12-step, totally. But they wanted to hear the other side because they had more and more patients in that program who just weren't going to do it. They just wanted to do recovery, but 12-step was not going to work for them. And so the staff, out of professional responsibility, brought in an alternate speaker and told me in confidence that right now they can't have LifeRing meetings, but it's on the agenda, it's going to happen. I read somewhere that it takes, from the time in psychology, that it takes between the first full-fledged theoretical statement of a school of psychology to the point where it becomes adopted in some considerable practice, 17 years. And that progress is measured in funerals. As the old guard dies out, new ideas can take root, okay? So this is a marathon, not a sprint, okay? Patience, patience, patience. And I want to say that the message that we are sending out is being heard. I'll skip a whole lot of stuff that I was going to say if I had an hour. I just got a blog from Lorraine Robinson in Hawaii, who's a director over there, who's a great friend of LifeRing. Sent me the recovery principles, definition of recovery from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, a very important federal agency in charge of recovery monies. They finally met and decided what recovery is, the definition of recovery. Well, listen to the principles of recovery. #1, it's person-driven. Now, what else could it be? Well, it could be God-driven, couldn't it? Okay, it's person-driven. That is a humanist or secular statement right off the top. #2, it occurs via many pathways. Look at it. It occurs via many pathways. Hello? That's finally sinking in at the federal level that recovery occurs via many pathways, okay? Recovery is based on respect instead of on contempt for the recovering person. And they say recovery is an individualized process whereby each person's journey of recovery is unique, and whereby each person in recovery chooses supports ranging from clinical treatment to peer services that facilitate recovery. Okay. You see what they're saying? What they're saying is that the basic approach of LifeRing is a valid approach to recovery. They would not have said this 10 years ago. 10 years ago, they would have said, and probably did say, that it has to do with doing 12-step and completing the 12-step and accepting blah, 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 blah. But now it's a whole different atmosphere out there. And what this means is that, A, we're being heard. And number two, doors are opening for us. The atmosphere is, the sky is getting, even though the sky out there is gray as hell, the sky for LifeRing is turning blue. The sun is rising. The future is bright. We're gonna do good. We're gonna be gay. We're gonna be great. Okay?
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you.